Hey y'all, this is Jared Swithrow, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up the sound system before you actually do a sound check. So I'm going to take you through the steps, like turning on the PA system and then getting an input list and plugging things in. So let's do it. Okay, so as we enter the sanctuary, the first step is to turn on the mixer. Now the rule of thumb is we turn speakers on last, mixer on first, because the mixer can often make a popping noise when you come on. So turn the speakers last, mixer first. Now we notice it's actually already on, but there's no lights. What's up with that? Well, that's because it's plugged into this power conditioner here. And when we turn on the power conditioner, we should see that the lights come on the mixer. Beautiful. Now there's two things we want to do while we're back here before we go onto the stage, and this is going to make things efficient for us. And the first is that we want to load the correct scene for the correct worship team and the week that we're on. And then we want to make sure we know our input list over here, the actual list of things being plugged into the different inputs. So let's talk about that. Let's go to scene. That's the first thing you want to do. You go over here, you press view under the scenes section there, and that brings up the home tab. Now I'm going to select over to the scenes tab. And when we look at this, we notice here are scenes for the week, and just make sure that you're selecting the correct week when you're actually doing this for real. And I'm going to grab this little knob here, and let's go down to week 3. I'm going to press in on the knob. It's going to ask me, do I want to load it? And when I press yes over here for yes, notice that the scene changes. Okay, now I'm on week 3. And this brings me to the second point here about input list. So what that means is that's simply just the list, literally which input or what instrument's going to which input and which number it is. And you can write this down on a piece of paper if you have a lot of inputs for this week. But like for this week, you can tell there's not a lot of stuff. There's only 3 vocals here, 1, 2, 3, the wireless on 7 and 8, and then keys on 9, guitar on 10, or that might actually be bass, and then acoustic on 11. And that's really easy to remember. So if you have a long input list, then write it down. You also want to make sure you have this figured out before you get here on Sunday morning so that you can be here before the band even and start plugging things in, okay? This is also your chance to change things on the board. If you want to change the names of things or different stuff like that, this is your chance. So get that input list down, write it down, or memorize it. Okay, so now that we've got our mixer on everything, we're going to finish turning on the rest of the sound system, or it's called the PA system. We've got the mains up here. You can see this big one up here, and then we've got the sub down here, and those are on either side of the stage. We've also got these wedge monitors here that we're going to need to turn the power amp on. And where we do all that is here behind the curtain. So we pull back the curtain to reveal what's called the rack. It's this housing that has all this cool electronic equipment in it, right? And we've got to turn this on. So let's talk about what these are. This first thing is called the power conditioner. Everything's plugged into this. The mains, the subs, all this equipment you see down here too, it's plugged into that, and it protects it, okay, if there's a power surge or something. So this right here is not being used right now. It can actually be taken out, but or it might just stay here for years and years. Who knows? But we're not going to use that. This right here is called the S32. All right, literally everything that is on the stage is plugged in eventually to this, and then one cable goes from this all the way to the mixer. It's called the S32 or the Behringer box or the box in the rack, whatever you want to call it. It's what we plug things into. The bottom one is the power amp. This actually drives the 2 wedge monitors that are on the stage. Okay, so let's go up here to power conditioner, flip it on. The lights should come on. Yes, they do. The power conditioner's on. This has nothing because it's not plugged in. And then the lights are glowing on everything. So you want to check that the lights are glowing. And yes, they are. All right, well, now that that's on, let's go ahead and check our speakers to make sure everything is good with those. People will oftentimes come in here and be using them during the week, so things will be off. Like right now, the angle's really bad on the speaker. Let's straighten it out. That could be a big issue if we didn't do that. We look on the back to make sure everything's plugged in. The speakers are on, yes. But the volume right now is off. It needs to be at 9 o'clock, and someone must have been using this as a monitor. So they're cranking it way up. The other one can be all the way down, all right? And it's plugged in. Excellent. Let's look at this monitor. The monitors can oftentimes be unplugged, like this one is, because somebody moves it or something happens. This happened the other day. All right, now it's plugged in. Excellent. Let's check the other ones. Hope these are good. The speaker is on, it's plugged in, the volume's correct, excellent. And this monitor is also plugged in correctly. Excellent. Then we come down here to the subs. This is the last thing. We want to make sure the lights are on. Sometimes these sub lights will go on after they've been on for a while, but if you first turn them on, the blue light should be glowing. Very good. Everything's on. All right, let's head on to the next step. Well, the next thing to do is to actually check out our input list and start plugging things in to the correct place, right? And so we should have our input list memorized or written down. And our first stop is the keys and things that are permanently hooked up on stage. So our keys, and then see that speaker back there, our bass rig, right? Our drums, and then in front of the drums is the acoustic DI. It's normally set up. And then on the other side of the stage is our electric guitar. So we're going to look at each of those first before we start plugging in other things. So we look on the back of it and we notice that it's plugged in. We got power. Our damper pedal is plugged in, so that's good. Let's focus in on this. But there's nothing coming out of the output. Okay, so I find the cable down here, and I'm going to plug it into output left mono. To make sure it's output, we're coming out of our keyboard. So the signal is being made by our keyboard and it's coming out of it. Even just today, this morning, someone had accidentally plugged it into input and the keys wouldn't have worked at all if it had stayed there. Okay, thankfully I caught it because I just looked at it. All right, and then it is plugged into our DI box or direct box, and then it's the white cable here, and we're going to see where that's plugged into on the snake in just a minute. Okay, so now we've checked our keys. And you might not have all these instruments on the day that you're running sound, but maybe you do, so I'm just going to take you through each of them. We come back here to our bass cab, right? And the bass player will supply their own cable to plug in for the input. But remember, we're flowing out. We're going in and then flowing out of our cab, and we flow out from the line out. And this is going to give us control, okay? So we can mix it, so we can turn it on if you want. And then we're going to follow the cable and make sure it's plugged in, and it is not plugged in. All right, so I'm going to grab it, plug it into, I've got my input list memorized, I want it channel 10. Then we plug it into the snake. Now this is the snake, and it's really providing inputs for all the backline instruments. And when I say backline, that means instruments that are on the back of the stage, like drums, bass, electric. The only one that's actually on the front is our keys, right? But most backline instruments are plugging into this. All right, and since I'm here, I already know that this XLR with the white on it is my keys. And I know on my input list, I want it in 9. And I also know down here already, as we'll see in a minute, this is the acoustic DI output here, and I'm going to plug it in to channel 11. All right. Now, on our snake, channels 1 through 8 are for drum mics, okay? And so since they're permanently on here, I'm just going to check to make sure they're all plugged in, and they are. Okay, so that's good. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Oh, by the way, down here, this is for my electric guitar, but I'm not going to be using it today, so I can just leave it out. But if you're using it, you can plug it into whatever input you need. Let's check our drum mics. There are 6 of them, right? The first one up is our snare, okay? And it is it is way off, right? Somebody came in and used these during the week. That's pretty normal. People come in and use it. Get your eyes on everything. That way, if you've seen it, you know there's not a problem with it, okay? I'm going to make sure this is underneath the cymbal correctly. That's our cymbal mic. Come down here, look at the kick. Now it's way off. All right, it's not even in, and it's not even pointed on. Okay, so we pointed in correctly. This tom mic, or top tom, is pointed into nothing. Let's point it at the center of our tom. This cymbal mic is good. It's pointed well. And then this tom mic also is pointed good. Excellent. And that's all hunky-dory. This could be for our drummer's in-ears. We're not going to be using a drummer today, but in the future, we might have different kinds of in-ears or all sorts of them. Make sure they're plugged up as well. And then our electric guitar over here, let's look at it. Let's see the mic. The mic is actually touching the grill, so that's not good. Let's pull it off there. Very good. The last thing to check here for the permanent stuff is this acoustic DI. And now just remember, we're thinking about signal flow. The signal's coming from our guitar, out of the guitar, into this tuner pedal where it says input, and then it flows out, and it's going to flow into the DI box. Good, it's plugged in right. And then the volume's up, and then our acoustic guitar player can mess with other things here. Okay, and then it's flowing out. We know that we already plugged it up into the snake in the correct input over there. And that's it for the permanent stuff. Let's move on to the things that we normally have to set up and tear down. All right, well, here we are, the final stage of setup, and that is plugging in things that are normally on our front line, right? Things like vocals, or maybe another acoustic guitar, or strings that are on the front of the stage. You know, strings can sometimes be stage left or stage right, so can the keys. So depending on where they're at, you might want to plug them in over to that S32 box over there, okay? And that's for frontline stuff. And the reason we do that is because see this space right here that's running down the middle of the stage? We want that to be kept cable-free as much as possible. So that's why we have things plugged in the S32 box over there, and the things that are backline plugged into our snake over here, and that keeps things nice and clean, right? Because if we step on cables enough, it'll break them eventually. Okay, so know your input list, right? Know how many vocals you've got, all that stuff. And even if people aren't here yet, if the band's not here, go ahead and start setting up. That'll be efficient for your time. So that'll help the band, it'll help you get to sound check quicker. Okay, and that's good. More time, the better, man. So, you know, you can start setting up the mic stands, wherever the mics are being stored and the mic stands are, get them out, pull them out, as many as you need, and then you can start cabling them up. Now, if I go over here, I notice that let me focus it here. There are some cables on the ground, and you could use those that are just, if they happen to be sitting out, but normally we want things put up, right? And things are stored in the right places. So here we've got cables all over here, and there's other cables here in the box if you got a ton of inputs for that week, right? And then you just grab a cable. Now let's assume that we had just cabled up, okay, our mic over there. Let's say we set up a mic and we were running a mic cable. We want to run it across the front of the stage, normally behind this monitor, right? To make sure it stays out of the way of people's feet. And then when it would run right here, right? And then we would pull back the curtain. And let's look at this real fast. We've got these inputs here on our S32. Okay, these 6 inputs. And these are for our frontline instruments. So we would take that cable, and if we could put it in whatever input we need. Now, normally I like to do things in order, in line. So if there's something on stage right, it would plug into channel 1. The microphone physically next to it would be number 2. And then all the way across the stage, all the way to stage left, you go in order. And that way it lines up visually with the inputs on your mixer, as well as being able to see them go across physically on stage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But you can do it however you want, but that's how I like to do it. And then you just plug it in. Okay, so you got 6 inputs there to plug into your S32. Let's talk about these other inputs, okay, in case you're confused about these. 7 and 8, these are for our wireless mics, the handheld and the headset mic, right? So those are permanently placed, but then 9 through 16 here are all plugged in, and these separate different little XLRs are all coming from this big bundle of cords, and this is coming from the snake box beside the drum set that we looked at earlier, right? And so they just stay permanently plugged in so that we can plug in things on the snake. And 9 through 16 is our instruments, right? So when you plug into, inputs 9 through 16 on the snake box over there, okay, it lines up here. And then it will show up on our board as 9 through 16. So that's really cool. Let me explain where the drum mics, though. The drum mics are on 1 through 8 on our snake, but when they're actually plugged in the S32, they're actually channel 17 through 24, okay? But we do that just so that it's easier to plug in on our snake. But so on our mixer, right, the drums show up as channel 17 through 24, and that's why that is, okay? So that's how the snake box works. Well, very nice, y'all. That is our general overview of the setup before the sound check. And so my biggest advice is just, man, get in there, get active, get your eyes on everything. There are going to be musicians on stage that maybe haven't been doing this long. They might plug things in the wrong spots, or they're going really slow. So I just really encourage you, take a very active role. You can ask questions. You can tell people, do this, do that, because you're the sound person. And you're the one who's got responsibility for making things sound the best they possibly can. So own that responsibility, enjoy it, and feel free to ask questions yourself of people that you know they're going to know the answer to, or maybe they're more experienced. So don't be afraid to do that either. All right, I'll see you at the sound check video.